welcome to Advertising Week. I love this week, back in the movie theater. Hopefully you guys are staying cool on this hot September day. So we have a couple treats for you during this session. First, we'll actually share a few insights from an upcoming, soon-to-be-released mobile consumer insights study that's really trying to look at apps and brand loyalty. And then the second, which will be super fun, is we'll have Vinny Rinaldi up here, and he's the head of Addressable Media and Technology at Hershey's, and we'll talk more broadly about mobile marketing. So let's dive into the study. So we executed this up-and-coming mobile consumer insights study off of InMobi Pulse. For many of you in the room, if you know InMobi, you probably know us as an independent mobile marketing platform for apps. You may specifically know InMobi Exchange. That's probably the solution of ours that most people know here in New York market. But we launched last year a consumer insights platform called InMobi Pulse. So last year, InMobi did an acquisition of Pinsight Media from Sprint, the carrier, and InMobi Pulse was really born off of that. So InMobi Pulse includes a 32 million person panel that looks at 24/7 mobile consumer behaviors. It looks at all the mobile websites that consumers are visiting, what apps are they using on their devices, how are they engaging with those apps, and it also has a very broad depth of location signals for those consumers. In addition, InMobi Pulse leverages our top 5 weather app with all the GPS lat-long location signals, our app SDK data, and a couple other data sources. So we've done this broad mobile consumer insight study off of InMobi Pulse, and we'll talk about that study and the findings. So this is a pretty big study. The reports for this will come out over the next month. We've looked at 20 brands. For those brands, we've looked at 900,000 mobile engagements, passively observed whether those consumers are visiting those brands' websites or are engaging with the apps for those brands. We've also looked at 9.5 million physical store visits. So I'll show you all the brands that we looked at, but these are restaurants, coffee places, as well as drugstores. So these are all retail locations, retail stores. So we've actually looked at 9.5 million shoppers into those 20 brands from about 2.5 million people. And we've analyzed that data from about almost 120,000 different store locations. And then in addition to that, we kind of looked at attitudinal behavior data. We did a survey of about 1,400 mobile consumers to get a sense of, their reaction to these brands from a mobile perspective. These are the brands we're talking about. So in the next month, we'll release 3 kind of category level insight reports. 1 about kind of restaurants and mobile, 2 about kind of coffee places and mobile, and then the 3rd will look at the drugstore pharmacy space. We're expecting more disruption from an app perspective in the drugstore space as Amazon Go now launches into that category, and has even anticipated that they may move into the prescription business, medical business. So we'll see how that plays out. Already there's a lot of interplay between mobile and the restaurant space, food and delivery space. So we looked at that as well. So in this study, we divided the world into 2, right? One of those worlds is the app plus world. So we looked at either mobile engagers who had an app or shoppers who had an app. The other world that we looked at is the app less world. So we looked at mobile engagers to those brands. These are people visiting on mobile websites to the brands, or shoppers, people going into the stores of these brands. But in those cases, they did not have an app. So while all of these consumers we're looking at are engaged with these brands in some way, digitally or going in store, one set has the app for the brand and one doesn't. So that's what we were trying to tease out, like what is the difference on consumer behaviors with brands for consumers that have the app versus don't have an app. So here's some of the insights that we found. So for mobile engagers, for those people that had the app, they engaged with these brands more often. So we saw 6% lift in the average daily mobile sessions for consumers that had the brand's app versus those consumers that are engaging mobilely but just visiting the brand's mobile website. So there was a lift in mobile engagement for the app owners versus those that just are visiting the website. The second thing we found is on the shopper side. So as you guys know from the numbers, we looked at a lot of shoppers into these restaurants and drugstores. 9.5 million different visits into these stores. And I think probably the biggest takeaway that we'll share today with you guys is that for the shoppers, those consumers that had the app for that brand visited those stores 15% more often. So drove a lot more in-store visits than those consumers who are shoppers visiting the stores but didn't have the app. The other thing that we've been trying to understand at InMobi is kind of the difference in demographics of users between those users that use a brand's mobile website and those users that use the app. And there are some slight differences on the edge between people that are heavy app users and those that aren't. So mobile investments, like a mobile website, may not serve people that really are app people. But in general, what we found on these 20 brands is that the real difference of the app plus users versus those that are just visiting the mobile website is actually more tied back to the demographics of that brand's core audience, right? And so it really looks like customers that care about a particular brand, that brand is important in their life, that they're more willing to engage through an app experience than those consumers who may not be like the core customer base for that brand. And we have this data for each individual brand and for those brands versus their competitors. So certainly there are insights at kind of a brand-specific level, but this is sort of for the study as a whole across categories. And the last thing, we did do a attitudinal kind of survey-based data survey. We got 1,400 respondents on this. Really, one of the questions we asked is kind of why they have the brand app or why they don't have the brand app. And I mean, it's interesting, the attitudinal data to some extent kind of reiterates this idea of brand loyalists maybe being more willing to invest with a relationship through the app, right? Those consumers with the app want to make purchases through the app, wanted to improve their in-store experience, right? Want offers, sort of seem to have this relationship, right? Those consumers that didn't have the app said, I don't trust having my personal data in my app or device. So to some extent, that reflects potentially a lack of trust at that level with that brand, right? It could be that they overall don't trust the internet as well, but certainly that can be different level of trust with different brands that you're interacting with. And then they didn't feel like they got enough value, and they may not want to make mobile purchases, was sort of the other reasons they didn't have the app. So as I've said, we're going to release a few reports. If you are working with any of these brands, we're more than happy also to come in and kind of give you the brand-specific insights from the study. But I think this is really our attempt to kick off a discussion, right? Which is, how do you think about your app strategy as a retailer? How important is it to servicing your brand loyal customers and improving their experience? How much can it drive incremental sales and more maybe in-store visits? How do you think about your in-store programs and goals tying back to your app strategies? And I do think this question of loyalty is there. I think those consumers are willing to invest in a one-to-one relationship with brands is different than the anonymous relationship that you would have on a mobile website. So anyway, now we're going to turn over and have a discussion more broadly on mobile marketing with Vinny Rinaldi, and I'll bring him up on stage. So this will be fun, and we'll actually look at this from a Hershey's lens, which is a little bit different than the retail side. Oh my gosh, we're here.
2 weeks leading up
well,
to it.
I have to start off that you were named on the 40 under 40 list like last week.
I was.
Like,
yep,
we were doing this panel
appreciate
before
that.
he was famous.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So congrats,
Thank
very
you.
exciting. Up and comer affecting the industry, that's what the
Let's
list
hope.
is, that's what they say. Okay. So how do you think about mobile? Just overall, how do you think about mobile when it comes to from a Hershey's lens at the top level?
So it's a really good question, mainly because right now, mobile is kind of being indirectly driven through spend. And I think we have somewhat of a focus on more of the creative side of it. How do we use the platform to our betterment of our brands? But I don't think we've built out the right supply strategy around mobile. We've got some great partners. We do a lot with Cargo in building out a lot of our custom creative units and driving that mobile web experience. We've done a lot recently with Waze and trying to understand that, kind of closing that last mile for our consumers, but was such an impulsive buy. Mobile really needs to be front and center of all of our media buying, because in the end, the quicker we get in front of you when you're on the go, the quicker you're probably going to think about us when you're about to check out. So a lot more to come in that in 2020. I think we've got to kind of put the focus on what does it mean to close that last mile. But the challenges also lie in truly understanding the closed loop. We don't own retailers. We don't own any part of that side of the business. So it's kind of a hit or miss on did it actually influence my business. But mobile will be a focal point for all of Hershey's Media in 2020.
Yeah. Now, I heard that you, a year ago or so, were concerned on the mobile app side. You had been doing more investments in apps and felt like you might be hitting fraud. I'm kind of curious what you learned and how you're thinking about that now and what you expect from partners like InMobi to do for you.
Yeah, so obviously fraud in both in-app, you think about in-app not just in your mobile device, in the OTT and connected TV world. It is the most prevalent to fraud right now. So it has shined a light on some of our business, and we kind of were hesitant to jump fully in there, knowing that when a large majority of our quote-unquote fraud was being measured, it was coming only through in-app versus owned web. And the reality is not all it's measurable. So we actually had our agency partners at Dentsu and the Accordant team come in a couple weeks ago to talk about our supply path and really understand where the dollars are going and what's actually happening. And what we uncovered is the more people that are adopting, sellers.json and some of those other OM SDK through the IAB Tech Lab, the more we get ingrained in those, the better I think we'll feel more comfortable. We did invest in dumping all of our media in ads.txt in the past, and we saw it's not perfect, but it was a lot better than where we were. Yeah. So the more that the pub side starts adapting, I think some of these frameworks that the industry is putting out, the more comfortable we'll be. But the reality is 90% of consumption is happening in-app. Yeah. We look at some of our YouTube buying. Most of the impressions delivered on your mobile device. They're not happening on desktop. They're not being in the open web. It's really, truly in-app. So we've got to figure out the right experience there and make sure that we're measuring it properly so that we're not losing out on either attribution from our media mix model, but really just understanding the whole ecosystem better.
It's interesting because I think that loyalty equation on apps actually transfers to the media side as well, right? Where if I love NBA, like I have the NBA app, right? If I love Words with Friends, I have that app.
Better experience, the more time you'll spend.
You'll spend as much time. I go there every day. I got to have it.
We have that conversation to your list of a lot of retailers. Yeah. You're trying to drive this impulse category on your app. But when I go to your app, you can't even find my brands. Yeah. So how am I supposed to kind of tell that story together? So I think, to your point, the better your app is designed and developed, I think the more time people will spend there.
Yeah. And we're hoping in the study to come up with like benchmarks for those retailers, right? Which is, are they getting as much in-store lift as they should from their app? Because I agree, it's going to vary a lot by the brands, and you saw that in the study. And sometimes the apps are amazing, and sometimes it's like, how the fuck is this? Okay. What are the key strategies that you see for mobile? So, this is sort of stepping back because how does mobile, like you have this impulse category, how does it really play in that perspective?
You look at the whole world between branding, full funnel awareness, all the way down to purchase. And we're trying to put that lens on our entire media strategy. And when we talk about mobile, that just means a screen to us. We talk about in-app, that in-app could actually be on a television screen. Yeah. So you have to look at the combination of both. So how do we tell the full funnel approach from branding awareness and kind of that intent and purchase behavior when you're closer to actually being in store? So you bring up foot traffic. That's a really good indicator for us. Are we driving more people in store? Frankly, if I drive more people in store, it's up to my sales team to actually close the sale. Yeah. There's only so much we can control with media. We've dabbled and been doing a recent test with Waze. And actually every convenience store, gas station that you see on your map actually has a Reese's logo, not a 7-Eleven or a Speedway. So we're actually seeing, what's funny is since that launch, I've gotten 15 different customer emails. How did you do this? Why are you replacing our logo? What's going on? And frankly, it was more about the awareness. So obviously it's getting noticed and people are seeing that increase in foot traffic. So I think the more we can tell people to kind of follow the journey, the better. And they bring that all the way back to awareness because in-app on TV, 18% of the OTT consumption is actually happening on mobile devices.
Yeah.
So it's not just the TV in front of you. We've got to think about multi-screen and understanding the entire consumer journey through all those touch points.
Yeah, and that really brings up, I mean, people talk about mobile as the second screen, right? That's always been like, oh, it's this really personal screen, it's a second screen. But in a lot of ways, it's sort of the center in a person's life. It's their first screen. And then it has a whole bunch of interplay, right, with out-of-home boards. When you're walking with your phone, you see those and are hit with that messaging, or in transit mode, right, where the only thing you're doing on the subway is basically on your phone. Or in television, right, where there's this very big link on mobile video between the devices. And then I also think about the shopper programs you're talking about, right? So it feels to me like mobile has this like connecting interplay with a lot of different media. So, I mean, how do you think about that and potentially changing the way you kind of execute media?
So one of the big things that we look at is separating out urban versus suburban. And we're trying to define that right now. What is urban? Because to your point, when you're commuting through subways and not actually driving to work, you're more consuming on your phone. You're actually seeing those out-of-home billboards, et cetera. But if you separate the two sides, the two coasts, everyone in between is mostly driving to work. So how do we make sure we stay in front of them and top of mind when we have a lot of those construction workers going to work every day that are grabbing our products on the go every morning? So we're trying to find the balance now of shifting into, can we do in-app radio, in-app audio? How do we stay in front of them so that we're not only solely focused on the two coasts in the city dwellers and everyone that is consuming at all times on their mobile device? You know, if you think about the stats where population is, every consumer in the US, in average, aggregate, spends 3 hours and 47 minutes on their phone. Most of that is predominantly to the cities. So we've got to find the in-betweens of how do we also reach everyone that's in between New York and LA and San Francisco. So it does bring in more out of home, not necessarily digital out of home, but using the different digital out front media billboards that we were talking about earlier and kind of bringing that whole picture together to tell that consumer journey. We haven't picked the perfect place yet. We don't know the right balance between that reach and that frequency, but that is definitely a big focus of ours.
Yeah, we see a lot of spending in the mobile side that leverages geo-targeting, right? That has specific either shopper programs or specific markets they want to move product on. And that seems like a good opportunity for you to have very distinct messaging, right? Because at this point, we're kind of losing a national voice, right? Like we have a divided country in many ways, and marketers are having to deal with that. And anyway, I just think it's interesting to think about it from your perspective as you try to divide these different mentalities and ways of life.
If I separate geography and creative, first and foremost, when we focus on geography, a lot of that is through a variety of ways, mostly driven by our seasonal business. So our Super Bowl is coming up, Halloween. It's no one else's Super Bowl but ours, as well as Easter. Those are our two big seasons. And what we've noticed is we know going into the season how many products we sold to every retailer. It's gone. Our season's over. But the reality is we have to sell through. The more we get off the shelf before the drop dead date of the actual holiday, the more our sales will be next year as they buy our products. If we don't sell before October 31st,
they have to discount them then,
and they have to discount them. So if we don't have a number we hit on October 31st and everything gets discounted, next year's buy is going to be less and we lose. So our focus on geography base is actually focusing on the markets that are underperforming during our biggest seasonal holidays. So all of our media is actually driven to over-frequencing those markets that are below the national average sell-through. And that is actually set up on a weekly basis. We don't just set it and forget at the upfront. Every week we pull the data, we look at every single zip code of where we're underselling, and we then upload a new list to go to market.
And is this the same process Hershey's had for a long time, or has this changed?
We launched that last Halloween was the first time. By doing this and using some control and exposed markets, we drove an incremental of $4 million in sales that we can say was media reliant, but when you look at the difference of the actual markets, we did have that extra impact in those markets. So then we did it at Easter, and now we're obviously launching it at even greater length this coming Halloween. And it's very simple. It's geo-targeted media. It's nothing earth-shattering. But what we did was put a business lens on it and actually took our business data and partnered with our sales teams in the organization to kind of bring that together.
Yeah, so it's much closer coordination between the store side and shopper side and retail side than interesting.
And then the creative side, that's the next kind of unlock we haven't gotten to yet. We've dabbled here and there, but what we really need to start doing more of is taking our audience strategy and developing creative that aligns to every single different audience. Right now, a lot of the way we do it is TV into digital. January 1st this year was the first time we ever did a digital banner. So you can imagine this big evolution that we're going through. Now we're partnering with like Cargo and other mobile platforms that are helping us build this creative. You know, Facebook, Snapchat, we're trying to get more ingrained in the ways that their apps work, because you can't just take a TV ad and serve it in every platform.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah. And how is your mix changing from television to digital?
Next year, knock on wood, early budget indication, we will be sub 50% for the first time.
Wow.
6 years ago, we were 97% in television.
Wow.
So it's come a long way.
And you're doing, on the digital side, you are doing a lot of TV extension, like video,
Correct.
impact work
Correct.
now, but thinking, okay, we need to maybe do audio and some other formats.
We play heavily in the video space, mostly in YouTube. To be quite honest, we're starting to do some more open web and move towards that. But next year, you're going to see a big shift in total video, connected TV, OTT environments, what we're calling streaming, as well as kind of taking that identity graph through all the lower funnel stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I think mobile video has done quite well on the TV extension space for a while.
It's got everyone's eyes on it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so, I mean, you don't own the retail channel, but I still want to ask you about attribution.
Well,
what a pain in the butt. Okay,
it's
so.
Probably the hardest thing I've ever encountered in my career is trying to figure this all out. You know, you come from a data and technology background where you always could close the loop. And then I walked into the doors and I'm like, what do you mean you don't know your audience? What do you mean you don't know where it was bought? How do you not know that? Then you realize nobody shares that. So it is probably the biggest headache we have, but I think, you know, as I talk about the geo-based stuff we're doing, it's the best way for us to get closer to the pin. You know, you look at, you know, some of the biggest indicator I think that we can tie media to from a attribution standpoint is looking at household penetration growth. If we grow household penetration, in theory, our business will go up. More people buying, we're reaching more users, we're gaining new customers, sales should increase. But if we don't keep an eye on that household penetration number, we're going to lose share to Mars, which is who we don't want to lose share to. But really, there's others that are starting to kind of encroach on the territory. You look at what Kinder Joy's been doing with the Kinder Egg, and there's some others that are kind of dipping their toes in the space. So we've got a lot of different challenges, but number one challenge is really understanding how much of our media is driving that sale.
And you do try to run these IRI kind of shopper panels, but it seems like potentially the in-store measurement is quicker, faster for you to actually see the impact and drive that.
And to no one's fault, but it's the reality of the nature of the business right now. We rely on the media mix model. We look at a lot of sales lift studies. They take anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks after the campaign ended to get anything back. So we've actually been working with those partners though to get closer to understanding how to optimize in real time. IRI and Oracle have both built a product that's mapped into the trade desk identity where it actually has conversions. You give them a SKU going into campaign, they tie a pixel back to it, and they try and as best suit you to a conversion to your exposed media, and we're getting CPA numbers. Now, there's gaps. Nothing's perfect right now, but it is closer than we've ever gotten to being able to optimize to something other than viewability, completion rate, and all the basic media metrics.
All right, more multi-touch attribution at least. Yeah.
Closer.
Closer, not perfect.
Not perfect.
Do you see mobile as an opportunity for you guys or as a real disruptor in the business, right? So it's certainly disrupted quite a few other categories. I mean, you see it in the food delivery side for sure. Transportation's clearly been turned upside down. But what do you see from a Hershey standpoint?
From a media side, I think it's more changing the game of how we get closer to the user who can buy in that kind of moment of truth.
For you,
Big opportunity there. But on the other side of the house, when we think about purchase behavior and how it's changing, you know, our e-commerce team or digital commerce team is heavily focused on online grocery. What's happening with OG at Walmart? What is, you know, the click to purchase with, you know, Target's doing Instacart? How do we get closer? You know, when you're impulsive, we need people in store. You need people on the checkout line to grab us and leave. But if they start spending online and just picking up and leaving, they're not at the store. So we're trying to solve that kind of gap. So it's little bit of a disruptor, but I think there's a huge opportunity to unlock a new revenue part there. But then there's these small players like GoPuff, who I'm sure not many of you have heard of, but they're in some markets where you actually can get anything you want delivered. And obviously, if you think about the nomenclature GoPuff, it's very reliant on another part of the country that's unlocking in the cannabis world. And how do you start getting whatever you want when you want it? There's another
Maybe another impulse category.
very impulsive. But there's also another company called Cargo with a C, which actually has put their products in partnership with Uber and put them in the Ubers. So you actually can unlock a Reese's right there in front of you. So at 3 in the morning, you leave the bar.
So it's interesting. So in a lot of ways, mobile is an opportunity on the media, side to really like engage with consumers, have these high impact video placements, all that. But on the other hand, mobile is disrupting the retail channel.
Yes.
It is fundamentally changing how people purchase things. And that could be problematic or have an opportunity. You don't know. Like
it's a mix.
A little bit of a mix.
Think of the small one, Walmart with online grocery, great, big problem to help. Cargo, GoPuff, how do you solve a distribution channel there? Yeah. Where are you putting the products? They're basically buying it off the shelf and putting it into the cars to hopefully scale. They don't have a distribution center. So how do you get closer to those kind of little environments? So you got a lot of different challenges and headwinds to deal with there, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity in disrupting how we get products quicker.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so we have one more question, then we'll have time for questions from you guys if you have some. So thinking about this mobile as being so disruptive for your retail partners, right? How do you think about mobile from like an insights perspective, right? And potentially how you leverage what you learn more to change your relationship with the retailers or potentially be more in partnership with them. I mean, to some extent you have the same goals, right? Which is try to get more people in the store. Like it's a symbiotic relationship between your impulse product and going to the store. And also not buying it on Amazon, right? Which doesn't always help you.
Well, we have a solve there. Our product melts, so nobody buys it online. So we don't have as much challenge there, but it is a growing space for us. E-commerce is actually growing more than we had thought. So we're trying to solve a lot of those. You think about, you're not buying a $1 chocolate bar on Amazon, you're buying it in bulk. But it has to ship in bulk, so you have cold pack that you have to worry about and how you get it there. So it's not a bad user experience and your Reese's Peanut Butter Cups melted. That would be a problem. Not only for the business, but also everyone that can't eat it. Because if it's melted, you don't get the joy of it. But
it's still pretty good.
Yeah, sometimes. But no, I think when we look at foot traffic, how are we going to our retailers saying, look, we're driving more people to your store. How do we combine these insights together to drive more business for both of us? You also look at some of these mobile providers we talked about, Factual, Foursquare, Google and Waze, and really unlocking insights around the consumer journey. Yeah. What steps do they take before they go to that store, and did they buy a cent? Is it somebody who goes to the daycare, then to the bank, and then to the gas station? Do they go to work all day and then at 12 o'clock they leave to go get lunch and they're in New York and they can go anywhere? So it's like really trying to understand the user journey better, mostly based on just digital touch points. But again, not owning that closed loop retail piece, it's kind of a crapshoot. But the more we can tell the story of driving people to in store, the more we can unlock some more of those sales.
Yeah. And then you were talking about how things have changed at Hershey's in terms of really working with the sales teams, right? And kind of planning together. So, I mean, how do you potentially change what they're promoting in the stores or, make sure that you're following through on those promotions? Like it's got to be difficult to get in line, both the digital marketing side and, everything that's happening with the relationships with the retailers.
So today, there's not really a good solve. Our internal teams are kind of situated a little bit differently. We are all brand media. We focus on all of the upper funnel awareness, and then you have shopper marketing and digital commerce marketing that kind of sit over here. So going into 2020, what we've done is partnered with them to get their merchandising calendar. Where are you going to be in store with merch? How do we make sure all of our media kind of correlates to one another? So if I'm in zip code 17033 and I serve you an ad, I know that you're going to go in the store and it's going to be there and it's going to be surrounding it. So we're getting closer. It's not a perfect relationship right now, but the more sales data we get, the more merchandising understanding that we get, I think the better we'll be able to inform the user of in-store loyalty programs, there's not a lot of them. We don't like coupons, to be quite honest. So we're trying to drive more of, like, recently we did a soda pop, freezer pop. So Reese's peanut butter cups in freezer next to soda, join those together. We're not partnering with a Coke or a Pepsi, but knowing that it kind of goes hand in hand. The biggest crossover in basket analysis is soda and chocolate. Yeah. So we kind of found a way to get closer. So doing more of that and using our media to inform it, I think we'll get it even better as we move into the future.
It was interesting for me on the data that we had that, you know, these app owners are going to those stores 15% more, which is great for you guys, right? You're getting them in store. But those, like, people are expecting that they get special offers, special promotions, right? And, but the retailers don't have something special, right? It's products that are in the store that can have specials, right? Yep. And whether it's, you know, a limited version of this with a different wrapper or whatever that is, it seems like that's where there's a symbiotic relationship between a Hershey's and these retail partners, and really giving them content that consumers want in order to have that one-to-one relationship through their apps.
Creates a more personalized experience, knowing that when we launched Reese's Lovers, it was actually in store. We launched it really early, and Reese's Lovers, for anybody that doesn't know, was a 70-30 split. You either selected peanut butter or chocolate. 70% of the product was one or the other. And that took off like hotcakes, but we started media around it, and it wasn't in every store yet. So not understanding where distribution is kind of put us at a disadvantage. People saw it was a bad user experience. We didn't know where markets they were in. So that's why we're trying to get closer of, like, okay, if you know where your distribution is and it's not national, we shouldn't run national media. How do we mirror those two together so that we're not telling somebody to go get something that's not there?
Yeah, exactly. Makes sense. So we do have time for questions if there are any. Oh, here, they're up here on the screen in this bright red. All right. Does one of these look good to you? I mean,
you pick.
Okay, let's see here.
They're all impulse.
Oh, I don't know. The last one is interesting. You want to talk about that?
We were just talking about that. Sure.
I know. Well, it's not vaping, so. Okay, we'll ask the last question then. Okay.
Sure.
Is Hershey's doing anything to reach health-focused consumers? And then there's a variety of other questions, but this is sort of the category.
So in theory, we're starting to unlock that. I think one of the biggest challenges we run into is, you know, we look at the first week of the year, January 1st to January 7th. Everyone's on their big health kick. We actually shut all media off because it's never had a return for us.
Weight Watchers market.
Exactly. So why spend what you can? But, you know, we've actually grown our portfolio all outside of chocolate. So over the past 18 months, we've acquired Skinny Pop, Pirate's Booty, and most recently One Brand, or more nutritious bars. So we're not focused on putting chocolate into the health conscious world. We're actually focused on expanding our portfolio into more of a snacking powerhouse, which is what we're calling it, so that we're not just thinking, if we don't have chocolate, our business goes away. That's not the case. We're actually looking at those health conscious areas, but acquiring companies to help us get there versus trying to shove chocolate as a new healthy option. We did, though, create a healthy option in Thins. So Reese's Thins launched this year. It's actually individually wrapped in a quarter of the size. What's funny is you actually are like, oh, I'll eat like one. No, I'll eat like 5. Because it doesn't feel as big because I'm only eating.
That's very American.
They're super thin. But what we've seen is when we actually launch those, we're seeing a lot more of the organic search around, are Reese's Thins gluten-free? So you have a more healthy, conscious mind thinking of our products in a different way. I wouldn't say we're using, you know, in this question, you've got apps like MyFitnessPal, Runkeeper. We're not targeting those just yet, but obviously as we start taking on more of our portfolio in the snacking environment with One bars as well as the Skinny Pop and Pirate's Booty, moving more into that health conscious kick and snacking environment.
Well, okay, I'm a big hiker. I'll just do a sidebar, and I go to REI to get all these like hiking sugars.
Sure.
You know, Bonk Breakers is the name of one. But they're just basically straight sugar to have energy on your hike. And I'm like, okay, this is a candy, but it's just being marketed as if I'm like really healthy, right?
But
so I just feel like it's affecting
But
you,
if you put a Reese's there, you're probably not going to grab the Reese's versus the Bonk.
No, I know, but I'd be probably better off with the peanut butter, right? But
it's probably be the same intake.
I don't know. But I do think it's a mindset more.
It is. It is that simple nudge and just telling that user it's one or the other. Oh, this is a healthy one. Well, if you read the ingredients on it, is it really that healthy? The sugar and the calories are through the roof. So that's, again, why we've expanded our portfolio to be a little bit outside of chocolate and start gaining momentum there.
Interesting. Okay, so this is a question about ads.txt adoption, and just using your buying clout to increase ads. I mean, I'll just backtrack on this question, which is around adoption of ads.txt. For in-app inventory. It's pretty widely adopted now. What's really being pushed out now is sellers.json.
Yes.
And even there's pretty big adoption, especially if you're buying off of the trade desk already.
Yep.
I think that's been a big
unlock.
change in the last 6 months for sure.
You're seeing more.
So I'm not sure Hershey's has to do something about this, but
Not that we have to do anything, but we're keeping a close eye on it with our partners. Again, when we ran recently a very in-depth supply path optimization study to understand kind of everything. We were 50 plus exchanges at one point, so we're trying to cull that down and really focus on probably the top 10. Yeah. We've got to get there, but I think the more you see sellers.json adopted, the more comfortable we'll start feeling. Yeah. But again, the ads.txt, it's widely adopted. It's kind of table stakes at this point.
Yeah. And even on the app side too, I would say. And we probably have time for maybe one more question. I don't know if I want to rethink your mission.
No, I like the bottom one.
Food company. I feel like you do food well.
I think the bottom one could be interesting.
Okay, let me read it out. Have you ever thought about partnering with someone like Fortnight or TikTok, where you can reach a lot of Gen Zers? Maybe a push to product more in that area.
Great question. It's actually been the biggest unlock for us this year. We did a complete launch with Dr. Lupo and Ninja. Whoever's a gamer out there probably knows who they are. A lot of people don't. But we created a product which was actually a Hershey bar with Reese's Pieces in it, and we called it Mashups. And we had Dr. Lupo and Ninja do this whole Fortnite battle and mash up against each other, and our product was everywhere. So with that in mind, we've seen an insane amount of reach and consumer experience kind of gearing towards our products by doing more gaming. So I think next year, we're either discussing, do we just go more and buy inventory around gaming, or do we actually talk about sponsoring a team? We did a recent launch. We'll be at TwitchCon this coming weekend, and a couple weekends back we were at the Overwatch League Finals.
I saw your ads, by the way,
Kit
on
Kat
Overwatch
Duos.
Twitch. Yeah.
We were talking earlier, we're about to launch Kit Kat Duos, which is actually a mint Kit Kat, which if you ever had a Girl Scout cookie that's a thin mint, it's exactly the same, if not better. And we did a huge launch at the Overwatch League Finals last week, and our brand was everywhere. So long way of saying, great question. We're already kind of way into this. We dove head first. The challenge we're now seeing, you saw Ninja leave and go to Microsoft, and everyone's now charging a lot of money to be involved here. So we're kind of keeping a close eye. As we got in early, we had hugely beneficial rates, but now our rates are going 3x.
So,
and it's,
okay,
what's the right
the
balance?
Overwatch Twitch screens are like permanently up in my house because of my son. So I saw all your commercials and sponsorships throughout it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, no, we are very bullish in that area, and I think we own the Olympics and the NCAA sponsorship through Reese's. Those are two prominent places we play in, but now we're talking about, do we maybe look at a different area, which is either a team or a league or in some capacity. So gaming is very high up on our priority list to reach that Gen Z market.
And is gaming higher on your list in this kind of sponsorship mode than celebrities? Now you're seeing all these celebrities sell so many products. I'm just curious.
We haven't done much in the influencer space. We will probably be doing a little bit more this year coming up, but I think we actually look at gamers as influencers.
That's what I feel like. I feel like it's celebrity-based as well.
They're better celebrities for us than Kim Kardashian.
They're real brand advocates for you, yeah.
So I think we'll have a mix of those, but celebrity to us is more around probably the gamers and some other areas. And Olympic athletes and that. So
okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been fabulous. Obviously, hearing about Hershey's strategy has been super enlightening, Vinny. So thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
you guys
guys.
for coming.